You are listening to The Four Corners, the official podcast of No Counters, No Combos. What is up, Squared Nation? Welcome back to The Four Corners, and today we have a very special guest. We are joined by Andrew Holm of the Cuddle Crew. We're going to have a pretty interesting discussion tonight, so I hope you guys are ready for some non-meta, non-competitive stuff, but it definitely has a place here in the Dragon Ball Super card game. So, Andrew, what's up, man? How's everything going tonight?
Everything's pretty good, man. I was really happy to be a guest on the show tonight, and I'm really excited to talk about, anti-meta and stuff that we're going to be bringing up today. Because everyone at level 1, and shout out to them, and everywhere else that I go to, everyone knows me as the token rogue player.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'm really excited to talk about it.
I'm definitely glad that you came to me and you approached me with a really good topic for conversation. Dragon Ball as a game, in my opinion, casually can be very, very fun. Of course, competitively, there's different aspects, there's different decks that you can play on a competitive basis, but on a casual level or on a local level, experimenting with different leaders and different card strategies can be very, very fun. But there is always room for a rogue strategy or an anti-meta strategy, and I think that they're different. I think that rogue and anti-meta are different in their own specific ways. But I notice, you've been playing, for several months now, and I notice that you always play something that's a little off the cuff. So if you wouldn't mind just, giving me some details as to why you choose to play non-meta or rogue decks.
Honestly, when it comes down to it, I used to be like a meta shell. In Yu-Gi-Oh! When I used to play that, I used to play everything meta. In the year and a half that I played Yu-Gi-Oh! I played, if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! Altergeist, Sky Striker, Trickstar Striker, Danger Dark World, BA. I played all of that. And I loved it, but at the same time I didn't, because I wanted to have more fun with the game, and I feel like that's another reason why I fell off with it and moved to Dragon Ball. And the reason why I play anti-meta and stuff is because I feel like it really adds this other level of enjoyment and satisfaction, especially when you win that game against a deck you shouldn't be winning against normally.
Right.
Or that people say, oh, this deck's so hard to beat.
Right.
Like Broly, for example, Green Broly right now, how it's dominating the meta. I play Mass Saiyan every week, and I have around an 80% chance to win, because they strike themselves really low early game, and that just opens up so many windows for me to play around them and toy with them and just hit them with double strike crits and starve them for their resources. And they'll be drawing all their cards from their deck, but they'll have to use them all in order to ramp themselves up. One of the things that I love to do is, if, for example, I'm playing against Green Broly and they have the 6-drop ready and they have 4 cards in hand, one of them has to be the 8-drop. So what I'll do is I'll beef up my Mass Saiyan leader to 25k crit on Awaken turn. I'll swing with my Open to their 6-drop to force them to go into 8-drop. If they've already used their negate to pop, because usually they already go for it if you have a body on board. Mm-hmm. And you make them starve themselves, drop the 8-drop. At that point, you've already swung with your Overrealm. They have to pitch 2 more cards in order to play it, so they only have 1 card left to combo with. You hit them with that double strike crit for 35, and it's devastating for them because they have nothing to work with.
Well, yeah, the whole when you're talking about Mass Saiyan, and I love Mass Saiyan. I played Mass Saiyan for a very long time. When it was the Mecha Frieza Ape format, and I played Mass Saiyan in that meta, so I definitely played it for a long time. It's kind of fallen off here and there, but I think that will always be a good leader. But specifically with that card and with that deck, the critical mechanic in the game is such an oversighted mechanic. I mean, you really don't realize how rough it is to take a double strike critical consistently. Most decks, especially red decks, most decks that are red are playing the intensifying power
furthering
trunks.
destruction.
Yeah, intensifying power trunks with either double strike Champa or double strike Kai, but it's usually only at most twice a game. So it's like, okay, fine,
Exactly.
I'm only going to take a maximum of 4 crit damage, or I'll just combo out, enough to not take it. But when you incorporate Mass Saiyan with the leader having critical, and all of its overwhelm threats having critical, and all of the 1-drops having critical, and then throwing double strike on top of it, you're playing.
Or
Go ahead.
also have like your double strikers. You like don't forget like power receding time. Or
Yeah.
not power receding time. It's power receding time. That has double strike. Kaba has double strike. Everything in my deck either has critical or double strike.
Right. It's just a lot of pressure
And it's insane.
to be able to constantly combo out of or defend. It's just like at a certain point, you're like you said, you're starving your opponent for resources, and they're not going to be able to get over the hump there. And on Mass Saiyan's Awakened turn, you're looking at if everything goes properly for Mass Saiyan on Awakened turn, you're looking at a 25k double striker that already drew you 2 for Awakening is going to draw you another card. So at minimum, you're going to have 3 cards in hand. One of those cards is bound to be a double striker. So it's going to be a 35k double crit. That's really hard to combo out of. It really is.
To mention, like, if you have already on board, like, if you draw a foreseeing hit that turn, like, if you're at like a later game state too, because I've noticed that the deck can perform well if you pilot it right against things like Mill or like slower decks. It struggles with Mill. I will admit that it is a very unfavorable matchup. But what you have to do is just play it smart. And if you play for the late game, if you side deck for the late game, you usually do fine. So like if you want to build up towards something like either Army Reborn or Demigra, you can do that. And you can wait. You don't have to mill. And when you get to that point, you can just overwhelm them with everything and rush them.
Right.
Because they can defend, but there is a limit to how much.
Of course, because everything is it's all resource management, and it's based off of, your not only is your 8 life your life, but your resources are your life too, because you can essentially combo out of pretty much anything. Now, I remember playing Mass Saiyan, and always saying that back in the day when I consider that deck top tier back in that format, the perfect description of it was a glass cannon. You threw cards at your opponent's face, and you tried to kill him within the first 2 or 3 turns, and it never had a late game, and it had a really bad recovery. So it got phased out. But as sets kept coming out and more cards were introduced, one of the best cards that came out, I believe it came out in set 5. Yeah, it came out in set 5 was Power Burst, the 1-drop Black Negate. Prior to that, the Time's Judgment card was really the only Black Negate that we had in the game. But because Mass Saiyan utilized its resources and tapped its energy offensively, you never really had any energy open for defense. So the fact that you got a Sparking Negate by taking a life, because another strategy of countering Mass Saiyan is to not hit the leader, so you don't give them life so they can't awaken. So now you add a Sparking Negate with that takes a life to your hand, and then you can also get a 1-drop black card from your drop area back to your hand. It's just one of those cards that was introduced to us that I think really fits well. I mean, obviously, you're not really playing too many negates in an aggressive deck, but I think 4 of Power Burst is the right number when it comes to that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Having Power Burst is one of the best things in the deck. However, playing 4 really depends on your play style, I'd say, because I play personally 3 of them, and I see no need for the 4th usually, because what I am trying to do is rush them down as much as possible, and you want to get that. Maybe if you're looking for that extra 1 card that you're not seeing enough of, you want to replace that. But in the sideboard, I always usually side it in. You don't get to see that at level 1 too often, but when I'm going to Anime Next on the 7th. I don't know if you're going to be attending, but because I can't make it to Atlantic City, despite me getting an invite, I am going to go, and I'm probably going to play Marseille. And I'm really excited to play there because you have just such a well-rounded chance for it, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah, I think
it can definitely slip through the cracks.
Yeah, for the most part, that's the thing, is a surprise factor. Not a lot of people are going to see it coming. I mean, it is a more popular deck when it comes to the Team Wars format, but in a regular constructed Swiss format, it's not a popular choice right now. So I think as the game progresses, I think when you have a really good leader like Massain, I think he will always be somewhat relevant just because the leader itself is very solid. It's just there's not a lot of restrictions to it. Most builds are played blue, or most builds are played red and black, but there really is no restriction to what colors you play in the deck other than black. So it definitely lends itself for some experimentation. I do think that the red-black variant is the best way to go, but just because all of the red cards are essentially all the aggro cards are red right now. But I have seen people experiment with yellow. I have seen people experiment with blue and green. So it's interesting to see how that leader is going to adapt or evolve as the game progresses. Every time they release black cards or red cards or whatever, there's always going to be that thought in the back of somebody's head, like, hey, this could probably work in Massain because it's one of those not like highly played leaders, but the impact that it did have on the game and it being such a solid leader. I think it's going to be one of those things that never really truly 100% goes away. Now, I know that you've mainly played Massain as a rogue deck, but I wanted to talk about the difference between anti-meta and rogue, because at least in this game, in Dragon Ball, I really do think there is a big difference between anti-meta and rogue. For me, an anti-meta deck is specifically built to counter whatever the meta is at that time. So obviously we're just coming out of the Super Shenron meta, and an anti-meta deck specifically built to counter Super Shenron could be considered anti-meta, but it could probably have more difficult matchups against other decks. I think rogue decks specifically are not tier 1, they're like tier 1.5, maybe tier 2 decks that just kind of give everybody a hard time evenly. So it's not like if you plop a rogue deck, like I considered Pan in the previous format when we were playing Super Shenron, I considered Pan to be rogue because it wasn't really top tier at that point. But if you're playing Pan, you can do pretty well against the field. Like you can do well against multiple decks because Pan has always just been a solid choice. But I think the big difference is that rogue specifically, like rogue decks are specifically built to not counter the meta, but do well against the meta, and not it be such a popular leader. But anti-meta decks are specifically built to counter one specific strategy that's dominating the game. How do you feel about that?
That's very tough to say because me playing what is considered by many to be a rogue deck my entire time playing the game. I've played plenty of different decks. I've played, like Mill. I've played Massain, obviously. I've played some questionable decks, as you've seen last night, me playing Goku Black, Vegito Ramp.
Yep.
I'd say the difference, in my opinion, between rogue and meta in this game is that a anti-meta deck, I would put Massain in anti-meta, for example, because it has a good matchup against like Green Broly and Skillless.
Mm-hmm.
But it really, really struggles against Mill if you're not playing it right and if you don't get the right stuff at the right time.
Right.
But rogue, a lot of decks can be considered rogue because they have those solid points. Like I'd say for the Shenron Gogeta format, I couldn't really consider Mill to be meta. I didn't see it popping up as much when I went to AC for my first event.
Mm-hmm.
and then top. I got my invite. I only saw like maybe 8 to 10 Mill players.
Mm-hmm.
Really well, and they had a good matchup against everything. I didn't think there was a single deck during that format that they really, really struggled with. Because they, with Shenron Gogeta trying to get to Gogeta 7, it was just free mill for Janemba because they're trying to draw out their deck to get the Gogeta 7 in hand. Slowly build up the 7 energy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think upon its release, and we can obviously transition now to Janemba, because Janemba is one of those interesting decks where if you look at it on paper, it screams anti-meta, because Janemba has an alternative win con that puts your opponent on a clock. Essentially making not only their 8 life their life, but also their library or their deck rather, their life, because as soon as they deck out, they lose. So when Janemba got printed and got released and it first came out, I don't think it was the popular choice for anti-meta because people were still trying to experiment with decks that were still in that specific format. But Janemba just screams anti-meta because Dragon Ball as a game, it's a very combo heavy game. Like, you need a specific piece to go into another specific piece to go into another specific piece. It's not really like, okay, I just need this one good card. Like, there's usually like multiple steps or multiple chains that you have to go up to get to your win con. It's like a slow progression throughout the game. And what makes Janemba so anti-meta is the fact that it's just, turning your leader sideways and milling your opponent, 2 cards or 3 cards, however many cards they decide to mill you that turn, and then you possibly losing to RNG because all of your pieces that you need to further your strategy get milled off. And there really is not a lot of graveyard recursion in this game. There's not really a lot of ways to get cards back from your drop area to your hand. So essentially, once your pieces get milled off, there's nothing more you can do. Now, what's interesting about Janemba is because it's so anti-meta and all this other stuff, it's so good at what it does that it propelled itself into a top-tier spot. And I think for as long as Janemba exists, it's always going to be a tier 1, maybe tier 1.5 deck, just because it has that alternative win con that nobody else has access to in the game right now.
Yeah, I could really agree with that. Mill and I don't have a very good relationship. I never liked the deck. I don't know how anyone could enjoy playing that deck for 8 to 9 hours at a regional. But I get it. If you want to win, you play what's good. But like for me, I want to be that guy. I want to be the Thomas Rose of fucking Dragon Ball, because it's like there's a certain satisfaction that you get where when you've climbed up through everything, all the struggles and all these bad matchups, and you perceive through everything, even if it is RNG some of the time,
right,
and it's not 100% skill, you feel so happy and so proud of yourself when you get to that point and you get recognition for it. And I feel like that's why a lot of people are willing to experiment with Rogue and stuff. That was a big thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, because everyone would play the trashy decks that would come out in the new set, and they'd be like, oh, there's this one card that's really busted, but you can never get to it because it's such a bad deck and it doesn't live past turn 1 because everything's an FTK.
Right.
But I feel like, yes, as long as Janemba exists, it will remain top tier until it gets hit, which I feel like could be imminent if they keep giving it more support. I don't think it needs any more support to do what it does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one of those people that likes, and I'm not saying that you are either, but I'm usually not one of those people that likes to complain about certain things. What I will say, yes, I do agree with the whole Super Shenron, and we could obviously put that in the rearview mirror now because it's been addressed, but my biggest problem with Janemba is not so much, how do I say this without sounding like a complete crybaby? It's not so much it's a very good defensive deck. Like, just blue in general is very good defensive, and it makes it frustrating try to push for damage. And then the leader has a built-in negate. And it's just like, okay, fine, like I get it. This deck is super turtley. It's supposed to be defensive. But what bothers me about the deck is the milling, the alternative win con that takes no skill at all. You just literally put a helmet on and turn your card sideways, and your opponent, is put on a clock. And it's like, okay, that kind of takes the fun out of playing the game. I do think Janemba is a necessary evil because it checks a lot of other decks. I don't, but it's to the point now where I don't think it's really going to get hit.
Like you can, like I picked up Mill for about 2 weeks, right? I went to a locals, and it was the first time I ever played the deck, and I topped. I all I had to do was keep tapping Janemba. I draw a card, they'd mill 2, and then wait and keep negating until turn 4 when I just go off, and I mill them more and more and more.
Right.
Not a lot of brain power required to play it, and
right.
I don't want to like be mean or like belittle people who play the deck, because they're still players, and I respect everyone in this community, pretty much everyone, and we all come here because we all enjoy something, and that's the card game and each other's company or the show or whatever. We all have something in common. So I wouldn't like to tarnish that name, but I feel like I agree with you. I don't like leaders or decks that you can just pick up and top with. Like that was my problem with Super Shenron.
Right. I mean, I could definitely see where that could be a problem, just like getting off the couch and playing the most powerful deck and topping. It does get frustrated, especially with, me, myself, I try to stay as neutral as possible, obviously, because I have multiple things that are going on. Like, yes, I'm a player, but I'm also a content creator, but I'm also this, but I'm also that. So it's like, I try to keep myself as leveled as possible. But I'm not going to lie, I am human. I've been playing this game since it came out. And it is frustrating sometimes when I throw this deck together because I have this idea and it performs okay, but, I'm getting a round 1 matchup against Mill or something that's going to just not let me play the way I want to play. So I think that's sometimes my problem, because I make the conscious choice to also play stuff that's not essentially tiered in our game on a local level. Like, I'm completely with you. Like, I love playing rogue decks. I love building something that is like, what is this? Like, it's jank, or it's like this, it's trash. Like, I love doing that. I love experimenting with all the cards and just throwing something together. And I have no fear throwing a deck together like the day of a tournament and just taking it to play it. That's what I did for level 1 the other day. I just threw that red-green, Kid Goku GT deck, which people are probably like, Kid Goku GT, what are you even talking about?
Kid Goku GT quad strike.
Yeah, the quad strike leader that nobody uses that we got in the draft box, and just make it red-green because I wanted to play with the new Alliance cards. So I was like, all right, I'll just throw this together. And unironically, like, I ended up going 2-2, which is not bad when you're playing a deck that shouldn't do well. But, obviously if I come across a Broly or something that's top tier, I'm going to get blown out. So I guess the child in me wants to have fun, but the adult in me wants to be competitive. So I clash a lot between it. But at the end of the day, for me, especially on a local level, I just rather have fun. Like, at this point, like, I go to level 1 on a weekly basis just to, hang out with the guys and play a few rounds of Dragon Ball. Like, I'm not really there competing for a gold medal or $1 million prize. So, when I have to put my batteries back in and start really hardcore testing for AC, I'll start doing that. I have no problem with that. But I've always said, casual Dragon Ball is really fun, and it gets stuck in the shadows sometimes because people want to take it really seriously, which is fine. But there is a fun side to it as well.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another thing that Rogue can really implement in the game, because I think personally, Rogue in this game can mean something completely different than another game, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Because Rogue in Yu-Gi-Oh! Means it's a deck that's going to win 1 in a 99% chance. A Rogue deck in this game a deck that may be 1 or 2 cards away from being busted or having something completely flip the meta on its back. Like if, for example, Mass Saiyan, let's say, got a combo card that is just like Champa or East Supreme Kai, and when you combo with it, if your leader card is a black Xenoverse card, it gives your attacking card critical. Like it could happen. I'm not saying it won't or it will or whatever, but like if they gave them something like that, everyone would flock to the deck. Like we've seen it happen before. We've seen old decks get support,
absolutely,
and they just shoot up immediately.
Absolutely,
and they have their points where they just flare up, and it's really fun to see that. It sparks creativity in people, and I feel like sometimes the meta can get stale, like Super Shenron meta. The only 3 decks you would see was Skillless, what was it, Broly BR, and Super Shenron. That is it. Like, yeah, you'd see Gogeta sometimes, but it never really made the top tables because it got overshadowed by Super Shenron, who just ruined the game, kinda.
Right. I mean, it's funny. It's funny when you look at it. When you look at,
Go
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like I was looking forward a lot to the Set 6 format until I realized that Super Shenron was a big problem. Like I was like, oh, I can't wait to play against a lot of Broly, because I was looking forward to playing against Broly with Mass Saiyan and getting a lot of testing in with that. I was like, yo, if Broly just turns out to be the top tier deck and nothing else really overshadows it, because I wasn't thinking about Super Shenron that much until we found out all the crazy stuff it could do. I was like, yo, Skillless Goku and Broly. I was like, oh, cake. Nah. But I was like, oh, my only check is Mill. Little did I know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mill's always going to be someone's check. But it's funny that you mentioned, I think if you look at the previous format prior to the ban list, the top 3 decks, yes, were Broly, Skillless, and Super Shenron. And you had decks that were like, you had Veku Ramp, you had Janemba, you had Yellow Dende Frieza, you had Blue Dende Agents or Blue Dende Scuffle Time. You have so many decks that are considered tier 2 because the format was dominated by Super Shenron, Broly, and Skillless. Now you take Super Shenron out of the equation, and I think it's wide open. I do think that, the ban goes into effect June 1st, so we're still like a week away or a week and a half away from it. But obviously everybody's already been playing the new ban list, because that's just how we are. So we've already been playing with the new rules. I do think once the format starts to like unfold, I still think that Broly and Skillless will be in the top 2. But I think that Gogeta BR sneaks in there just because it has a really good matchup against Broly BR. I think like that's going to end up being the new triangle meta. I think it's going to be Skillless, Broly BR, and Gogeta BR, and then everything else will be considered tier 1.5 or tier 2 after that. That's just my opinion.
I would totally agree with that, and I'm going to kind of sound a little hypocritical here because the last time you featured me on your channel, I lost really badly to your Gogeta BR, but I'll keep in mind this was the first time I ever played against Gogeta BR in person, and I forgot what half your stuff did. Yeah. But now I know it better. I have the deck myself. So I really think that meta is very susceptible to aggro.
Yes. Like
hardcore aggro.
Yes.
And especially Broly, because they're like, oh, like for example, I went to Toy Wiz, shout out to them, and I was playing in their tournament a couple weeks ago, and there's this guy who sat down with me. He pulled out his Broly leader. He's like, oh, you're playing Mass Saiyan. This should be really easy for me. I'm like, you kind of know what you do turn 1, right? Like you strike yourself to 4. He's like, oh, yeah, but you'll be dead by turn 2. And I'm like, okay. And he draws his hand. I strike him to 1. I went second, so I lost a die roll, thankfully. He places his energy, passes. I strike him to, or he plays the Broly, takes his life. I strike him to 3 life, over that turn because I hit him with double strike crit leader, drop a Mira, swing. So he's taken 6 damage already. So he's like at 2 or 3 life. And then I'm like, okay, pass.
Yeah, it's insane. Just and I've played against you a couple times, and it's a lot of pressure. Like if it's so uncomfortable because it's like it not only is the leader gaining crit, which is there's a lot of leaders that gain crit, but they're also he's also gaining 5k. Yeah, he's also gaining 5k. Your super combo is live turn 2. So if you are playing against RNG because of the whole mill aspect, with the milling the top 3 for the effect. But if you like if your opening hand like pre-mulligan is like a super combo and a Champa, I would just keep those 2 cards and shuffle everything else back. And I'm guaranteed to have one super combo at least not get milled into my drop area, and hope I'm just good enough to draw the other ones. And then you could push for serious damage with that leader if you have super combos active turn 2. That's just insane.
Well, like one of my favorite hands going second, because I base the deck around going second, because I want to lose that die roll. I don't care what you're playing. I want to lose that die roll because when I'm going second, I have that opportunity, like for example against Broly, to get you to 2 turn 1, my first turn.
Right.
So, like, I'll swing with leader, I'll play intensifying, and I'll drop a Mira. That's way too much pressure for Broly to handle turn 1.
Right. You're absolutely right. It is. It's just too much to overcome. And then it's like, okay, so as the Mass Saiyan player, you're okay with being aggressive that way because worst case scenario, if they combo out, it's cards that they're taking out of their hands to combo out. So you're essentially, even though you're not hitting their life, you're essentially still doing your job because you're denying them resources. So if you go, you swing with lead and you go up to 25k double strike crit when they're already sitting at 6 life, they have to combo up to 30 on an unawakened leader. So they have to combo 20 power. Their super combos are not going to be live. They're probably going to be tapped out. So they're going to commit 4 cards to comboing out of that with a hand of maybe 6 or 7. So you just got rid of 4 cards. You put them down to 3. Oh, but now you can overwhelm Mira and swing for 20k critical. And it's like they're either going to have to take that or they're going to have to combo another 5 cards. It's just like the economy and the math behind it is insane. But obviously we've had crit leaders in the past with set 1 Vegeta. Lord Slug is a critical leader. But when you're looking at the Crit King in the Dragon Ball Super card game, I don't think anybody does it better than Mass Saiyan just with the Awaken turn alone. Being able to mill on the front side, and then Awaken draw 2, mill on the back side. You're talking 25k crit base with at least 2 or 3 energy open for combo power. You can get some insane numbers. Draw. Yeah, exactly. Like it's rough. That type of pressure is not comfortable. And I'm sure nobody wants to play around that. And I'm actually surprised that, we don't see it more often. I mean, you've inspired me to rebuild Mass Saiyan, and I've been working, on it behind the scenes. I'm just not ready to start playing it yet because I want to make sure my ratios are good. But, I had given up hope on that leader because I was like, yeah, it's just not good enough. And then seeing where the game has transitioned to becoming more of a combo game, it's like, okay, so how do you stop combo decks? You deny them their resources, and Mass Saiyan does that perfectly.
And my friend, Kyle, who goes to level 1, he loves to bash on me in the server. If you've ever noticed, in the Cuddle Crew server, it'll be a new format. I'll be like, yo, you know what this means, right? Mass Saiyan's coming, and he'll tell me to shut up or something. But he knows I love the deck, and he's proud of me for playing it. Despite incredibly steep odds usually. Yeah. But I was surprised I got my invite alone off of this deck, and that is what's made me push for it. And if I could get an invite at my first event in AC, I want to expect, the player base to be creative. I want the best for the player base, and I want them to have fun with the game. Don't turn this into Yu-Gi-Oh! Mm-hmm. That's all I want. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to bash on Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it was my first card game, and I have respect for it in that. But don't turn this into a game where everyone hates each other because they're not playing the meta deck.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want. I want people to have respect for you when you pull out, your janky leader and you win. Like, I want them to have respect for you and not say, oh, you won because of some cheese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
I want people like, look at Puerto Rico, for example. Like, they're crazy.
Yeah.
Their meta is insane.
Just Latin America in general, their meta is so different. Like, it's just so insane. Like,
I wouldn't be
one of the top decks in Latin America was Shenron Veggies for a while, and it was like not doing anything here. It was insane.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the West Coast, though. The West Coast meta is different. I feel like on the East Coast we tend to play more aggressive and control strategies, where on the West Coast they're probably playing more mid-range stuff. Every meta is different, We just, I feel like, I feel like on the East Coast everybody just has a chip on their shoulder. Like, everybody wants to be the best. Everybody wants to be super competitive, which is great because that shows that you're passionate about your game, But at the same time, I do agree with what you're saying about, you don't want there to be any bad blood between anybody in the community, because at the end of the day, we're all part of the same, machine. We're all moving pieces, and we all have to get along really at the end of the day, or else this game's going to die.
Exactly, and I feel like this game is growing so fast, and I love the community to bits. I've never felt so welcomed in a community before. I feel like everyone treats each other like family here, and it really means a lot to me. Like Kyle, Graham, David, Kevin, everyone, I've never felt so welcomed in a card game before, and as a community, like, you guys are like my second family.
Yeah.
Because when I was in Yu-Gi-Oh, I do mention this game a lot because it's the only other card game that I played.
That's fine. That's fine.
16 when I started playing. I'm 18 now. I walked into a card store for the first time, and I was playing, I think, Cyber Dragons, and I sat down and, I wanted to learn the game, and I was sitting across from a guy who was playing Sky Striker, and he just beat me over and over and kind of laughed at me, and that's how I was introduced to the Yu-Gi-Oh community. I was like, all right, time to get good, time to get Altergeist, and that became my favorite deck of all time, despite it being such a degenerate control deck.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it because, it made you feel, like power over others, and I don't like how the game turned into that, where you have to have a big ego and a super expensive meta deck to win.
Right. I mean, I came from Yu-Gi-Oh as well,
sad.
So I understand exactly what you're talking about. I mean, the last Yu-Gi-Oh format I played in was the last Yu-Gi-Oh tournament I played in was YCS New Jersey back in 2010 or 11.
Whoa!
It was back
God
in
bless you.
Back in the day, it was Mermail and Fire Fist format, and I played windups. That was the deck that I played, and it was post all of the hits. Like, Hunter got hit, the Zen Mighty got hit. I think Shockmaster was about to get hit, so it was like I still played it, and I did well with it. But it was just like I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, I need to just get out while I still can. And I'm glad that I did.
Well,
and I had tried getting back into it here and there a couple times, but the game had changed so much. When they introduced the pendulum mechanic, and then they introduced the links, and I was just like, you know what, this is just too much for me. I'm gonna stay where I'm at.
Well, think about it. Think about it this way. I was a 16-year-old kid. I came in one day, never played a card game before. I came in during link format.
Mm-hmm.
I picked it up. I don't know how I did, but I did. And, it's like that one meme from Avatar. It's like when everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changed when Firewall Dragon attacked, bro. It was like the scariest thing ever, because you're playing your deck, right? And then all of a sudden you lose the die roll, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go second. I guess it's good because I got an attack. And no, you don't, because Firewall Dragon loops Cannon Soldier and burns you for 500 until you die.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's how the deck works. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, that was a great game. Let me go to the handshake phase.
Yeah, I mean,
And
luckily, it's not like that in Dragon Ball. Hopefully, it never gets to that. But luckily, it's not like that. I mean, I don't really. There aren't any FTK decks. There are OTK decks, sure. I think not right now. There aren't because Shenron is gone. But the thing that I like the most about the Dragon Ball Super card game is you really never know. Like, there's always like I perfect example. Shout out to Eggman. I give him so much credit for this. I
love Eggman.
When he went to the the Dallas PPG event, with the Chilai Wish leader, he was the only person at that tournament playing that leader, and he did so well with it. So it's like I want to be that guy too. Like, I want to be that guy who says, I'm going to throw this deck together and I'm going to do well with it, and it's going to become the next big deck. And you know what? After Dallas, the numbers started to increase. There was like 3 or 4 players that played it in the Springfield event. So it's definitely something that you can aspire to, and me personally, I aspire to in this game, is to try to be that innovator, because it's so easy to just go and say, okay, what's the most busted deck in the format? Okay, Broly. Okay, cool. I'm going to build this deck. If I want to play the secret rare, I'm going to spend money on it, but I don't have to win. I don't have to play the secret rare to win. I can still win without the secret rare. And Dragon Ball is such an inexpensive game to invest into that it makes it easier for people to play like super meta decks. Like, if you look at the Super Shenron deck, not the High to Mastery build, obviously, because I had Victory Strike in it, but the first Super Shenron build that we were exposed to was Danny Wynn's build, which was like the Storm build with Explorer Bulmas and stuff like that. It was like a $50 deck. Yeah, it was like a $50 deck. There was no set 6 cards in that deck besides the leader. Everything else was from previous sets. So it's like one of those things where, yes, Super Shenron became a problem, but think about how much innovation Danny Wynn had to go through to put that deck together, because it hadn't been seen anywhere else. So even though he probably built the most broken deck ever, he built it, or whoever built him or Jordan Beard, whoever gets credit for being the first person to build the deck, they built it from scratch, and then it started doing well, and then it dominated the format. I want to be that guy. I want to build something off the cuff and do well with it.
Well, I don't want to be that guy who builds, like, the most busted Mass Saiyan deck ever. I just want to be that guy who sneaks Mass Saiyan into AC and tops with it. And then they turn their heads like, yo, did Mass Saiyan just top?
I mean, anything is possible. Anything is possible at this point, man. Anything is possible at this point. The meta seems to be going into a slower format now. I mean, it looks like Storm is essentially dead. So until somebody makes it and doesn't give up on it, Storm is essentially dead. So the days of getting killed on turn 2 or 3, I don't really think are too possible anymore. You're probably extending the game now to 3 or 4, maybe 5 turns, which allows you to play more mid-rangey if you want to, and you hold your Awaken on an untapped 2 leader. You can tap out on turn 5 for a 5-drop and then untap 2 and have 2 energy open. So it's like, I feel like the game is slowing down. So the slower the game gets, the more opportunity there is for rogue or anti-meta strategies to kind of sneak in. And I think Mass Saiyan being an anti-meta strategy that's aggressive is what's going to help it. Because yes, right now in the format that we're moving towards, it does suffer a little bit to aggro decks, because like I said, they're essentially combo decks, especially like even maybe skillless is probably the least of the combo dependent decks, but still, if you're getting hit critical and you're taking critical damage early on in the skillless deck, it's not going to be fun for you, because the whole point of playing that deck is you can Awaken on 6 and just defend your life and then not have to worry about taking damage till late game. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything pans out. But aside from Mass Saiyan, because I know, I could talk about Mass Saiyan all day, what other leaders or decks do you think could be good as far as rogue or anti-meta is considered?
All right, so you might call me crazy, but there's a reason why I was experimenting with the Goku Black Leader. I'm predicting that after hearing about your video, your podcast a couple weeks ago with Kyle, and talking about how they might print a Wish Leader for not Math Saiyan, Goku Black in the anniversary box. It's kind of got me thinking that not just that, the leader itself is really insane when you think about it. You don't need, like, if you're going first, your second turn, you have 3 energy.
Right.
You could play so many different things.
Right.
Like, if you resolve 2 objections, you are so far ahead of your opponent.
Right.
That there is no possible way that they are going to beat you to your win con. Like, you can drop 8 drops, 4 drops, really big cards really fast. And I know he's not a good leader until he gets to 2 life kind of, but if they change stuff, or if they gave us a new leader that worked similarly in his mechanic where you take a life, put it in your energy, or maybe an extra card from your hand and put it in your energy, that would be even more busted. But something like that would be really cool. And another rogue strategy that I've thought of recently, I think Lord Slug is definitely up there.
Yeah, I like Lord Slug a lot.
Yeah, Lord Slug is crazy because the Zaylans, I think they're called, the free blockers.
Yeah.
You can drop 3 of them turn 1 if you want.
For sure.
You could just say, oh, I opened up 2 blockers, I'll just keep them and play them whenever I want. And I can tap out and then play 2 blockers and pass.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what you were saying about the Zamasu or Goku Black Wish Leader. I mean, that's the dream, right? Everybody in the community, not just us, but that's the dream, to get either a Zamasu Goku Black Wish Leader or an Android 17 Wish Leader. Like, that is the dream. Now, the unfortunate reality of that dream is their only chance to do it is in the anniversary box, because after the anniversary box, the next release after the anniversary box is set 7, which introduces a new block. So, like I was talking earlier in the week, and I was talking last week to Joey from Crossroad TCG, when the Overwhelm block ended and introduced the Shenron Wishes deck, there were no new Overwhelm cards printed in the Shenron Wish block. So, ipso facto, if that pattern continues, that means that Wish Leaders are not going to get printed in set 7. Unless they do a supplementary set or an expansion set like they're doing, or power boosters, stuff like that, they can reintroduce them into the game. But for the most part, as far as the release schedule of what we've been promised, the anniversary box in June is the last chance for them to print a Zamasu Wish or an Android 17 Wish Leader. And the more and more I think about it, the less and less I think it's going to happen, because I know for a fact that we're getting a Toa Leader in the anniversary box, because it was already announced. However,
it's going to make me happy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're going to print leaders, because they're focusing more on supporting older archetypes. That could loosely mean that they can print a new leader for an older archetype, so I get why people have been so excited about it. But I really don't know. I mean, we don't have to wait much longer. They're releasing all of the information on Friday. They're going to reveal all the cards in the set on Friday, so we'll know by then. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And right now, everybody's kind of in a limbo, because yes, we were given the green light by Bandai that they were going to make adjustments to the ban list, but it's so close now to the release of another set, I guess you can call it, that people don't really know what they're going to play moving forward. Like me, I have no idea what I'm going to play, because I'm not sure what's coming out in the anniversary box. If something busted comes out in that box, then I'm probably going to have to play that. Like when they revealed the new Trunks card, the new 2-drop 15k, I immediately thought, okay, Pan is getting support. Pan might be the move. So I have to really wait and see what they're going to release before I make any decisions moving forward. So for that, until then, I'll just continue to play jank and rogue and anti-meta stuff just to have fun.
Yeah, just like the thought of them printing something Overrealm related makes me so excited, because I know that Bandai loved the Overrealm like idea, because when they released it, they gave it so much support. Like in the time that it was around, like everything had Overrealm, like for 2 sets.
Yeah, I mean, Overrealm's a great mechanic. It really is.
It is an amazing mechanic. You can be argued, if it got more support, it could be one of the most busted mechanics in Fish.
I think it's perfectly balanced though, because you can only Overrealm once per turn. You're getting rid
unless
of
you have Wormhole, which
only one leader has it, and how often are people playing Demigra? Like,
I mean, what I'm thinking is like,
if they give Toa Wormhole, then that might be different.
That's what I was saying. If they gave Toa Wormhole and they made her good, it'd be scary.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what they decide to do. But Overrealm itself is a pretty balanced mechanic. You lose your drop area when you do it, so you don't have access to sparking, which is, like, out of all the things that Bandai has designed, I think Overrealm was designed the best. Yes, the cards are powerful, but you only get to keep them for that turn. They leave the field after. They go to your warp, so it's not like you can recur them from the graveyard. And most of the Overrealm cards get their effects when they're played with Overrealm. So it's like, it's almost the perfectly balanced it's the most balanced mechanic that we have in the game. Like, I remember when Overrealm first came out, and I was like, oh, this is busted, because I misunderstood how Overrealm was played. So, for example, I remember, if it was yesterday, I remember playing Overrealm against a Pan player, and I had 5 cards in my drop area, and I went to play Time Patrol Trunks, and I only warped 3 cards. And he was like, wait, what are you doing? And I was like, no, it's Overrealm 3. He's like, no, you have to send your whole drop area. And then I was like, oh, okay, that makes it more balanced, because I'm losing drop advantage. Now, if that's how it was meant to be played, where you only have to Overrealm, you only have to warp cards equal to the card's cost, you can play Overrealm and Sparking in the same deck, and now it's super busted. So I think Overrealm was designed very, very balanced, and it is the perfect game extender, because since they're black cards and they're colorless, they have no restricted costs, so everybody has access to it, which is the best part about it.
Right.
But I don't know, if they were to give Wormhole to another leader, it would make sense for Toa to have it. I just don't think that they would do it. That would just be insane.
Oh my god!
Like, if they made a good, if they made a good leader, like if Toa was a good leader, and they gave her Wormhole, like, that would be a little insane.
If what my hope is for the Toa leader, that or the anniversary box, I want them to give me something that I can combo with and give my cards critical if your leader is like a black Xenoverse related card.
Yeah, I don't think
I want them to put a restriction on.
I don't think the combo crit card is ever going to be a card. I don't think it's ever going to be a card.
I mean, if they're restricted to one of the quote unquote worst archetypes,
I don't think it'll ever be a card, because I think about it this way: if they were going to print a combo card that gave you crit, they would have already done it, because we have 2 double strike Champas.
True.
So maybe E Supreme Kai was supposed to be that card. Maybe E Supreme Kai was supposed to say you can combo with this card and choose one of your battle cards and it gains critical for the duration of the battle. But they decided last minute to just make it another Champa. Like, because giving something critical is insane. Because you just give it to it.
Yeah.
Like, you just give it to them. So imagine. So think about it this way. Think about it. So think about it this way. I play Scientist Fu, right? For 1 energy, and I'm probably playing Scientist Fu turn 4 later. So let's say I have 4 energy. I tap 1, play Scientist Fu, so I Overwhelm, draw 2 cards, right? And I swing with my Scientist Fu, no counters. Okay, cool. I'm gonna tap 1, give him 10k in crit. He's now a 35 double strike crit. And I have 6 cards in my hand? Like, that's insane. Or Mira. Mira's another one. Imagine. Okay, swing with Mira, give it a Champa, and give it crit. Like, You can swing with Mira as early in the game as you want. That's going to be guaranteed critical damage. Like, it's just insane, the thought of it. And how many double strike leaders are there? There are so many leaders that have double strike that if you were to give a combo card critical, it would just be nuts. Because people would have to read it just like they read the Champa, and they would have to negate leader swings, which is like the worst thing to negate. Because a leader swing has a fixed attack, you can easily combo out of it, especially if your opponent has resources open. You have to anticipate them playing another card, so you want to save your negates for a bigger threat. But if they had to negate the leader every time, that would just blow the game wide open. So I don't know about a crit combo card. Just
like a fantasy. I would love it, but it'd probably ruin the game. But or they just give Mass Saiyan as an archetype, like a new Mass Saiyan card or a new Toa. Toa needs a new card besides the leader, to be honest. Mira could use maybe something. I don't know. I was never personally actually like the biggest Xenoverse 2 fan, but like, and I wasn't a big Bardock fan either. I'm more of a Vegito fan.
Dude, Bardock's the man.
Bardock is growing on me.
Bardock is the man.
He's really growing on me.
That dude he's a legend.
He's really growing on me, bro.
Now that you got all this talk about these cards, I wouldn't mind seeing like a black Bardock card that's similar to the Champion Pack Trunks that reduces evolutionary cost for the SS3 Bardock. So I wouldn't mind getting like an Overrealm Bardock that's like a 3-drop that does something like a 3-drop 15k. That's like when you Overrealm this card, you can reduce the evolve cost of a Xeno Bardock in your hand by 2 or something like that. So you can make it so where you Overwhelm him, you swing, then you Xeno Evolve for 3, and then you play the big SS3 Bardock. Because the SS3 Bardock that card is really good, but it's hard to get it out for 5 energy. So I wouldn't mind seeing something like that, but I don't know. I don't know if it's needed at this point. Like, if they're going to support older archetypes, support stuff that's, like, really bad. Like, we got the Trunks card that was announced. We got the new Krillin card, which I think the Krillin card's really good. Like, I think it gives the Clash of Fates Goku another target for Krillin for destruction to bring in the 5-drop. And I thought that the Whis that they released was really good for, like, Beerus strategies. Like, I think they're going to give us some pretty good cards, and I'm just excited to see what the anniversary box has in store for us.
Yeah, because there's, like, no way they're not going to give support to Overrealm. There's no way. Like, it's inevitable, so...
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, they're literally making a Toa leader, bro.
Right, but they don't have to give the Toa leader any interactions with Overrealm. They don't have to.
That would be very sad, though.
Yeah, I mean, it would feel like a missed opportunity, because then if you make a Toa leader now that has all of this synergy with Overrealm cards, she should have came out a long time ago, because Overrealm is still played, but it's not as heavily relied on as it was in the past. And especially now with the new Alliance stuff, like that Alliance stuff moving forward is going to be ridiculous. Like, that Alliance mechanic is nuts. I don't care what anybody says. You know, the Gogeta gives you the ability of playing 2 battle cards for 1 energy, and one of them pops something when it comes out. I was playing against Nick yesterday at level 1, and I was able to bring out 3 creatures, or 3 battle cards for 1 energy, because I had my red and my green in my combo area. I tapped my red to bring out the Gogeta. Then the other red Gogeta, the 4-drop, comes out because you played a 5-drop Gogeta, so he comes out for free. Then the Gogeta kills something, so I brought out Surprise Attack Frieza. Now I'm sitting on board with a 20k double strike and 2 15ks, and one of them is crit for 1 energy. That's insane. That's wild. So it's like, I think that's like the new... That's like the new Overrealm kind of thing. It's like, okay, Overrealm was developed to extend plays. I think Alliance is going to end up extending plays. It's just going to be interesting to see how they balance everything out with Set 7, because I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
The Broly's nutty.
Oh, the Broly's gross. But it is a 5-drop. So obviously you cheated in with Tragic Awakening, but for the most part it's a 5-drop. So That's how that works.
Yeah.
But still, it's you can almost make the argument that it's a better at all cost Vegeta because you could do it turn 3. At all cost
Yeah.
Vegeta has to be done with 5 energy, so you're not doing that till turn 5. But Broly can be done on turn 3, which is wild.
Broly, a lot of people see Broly as a big threat. I guess since like I play super aggro, I guess he never really stood out to me. But the more you look at the deck, the more you realize, wow, it's insane. Because when the deck was announced, I like the structure deck itself. Not a lot of people were picking up on it. They're like, oh, he only has the crit line. It looks kind of bad. And I'm like, well, bro, look at the leader. And you tell me that this deck is not going to be busted. They just need to give it literally 2 more cards. And that was like a week before the 6-drop and the 8-drop were announced.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. You got the most busted deck in the game.
No, you're right.
Like before we had Super Shenron.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, it's Broly is just in a really good spot right now. It has Broly to me is a hybrid deck because you can play it aggressively, but then if for some reason you fail to be aggressive, you can fall back on the fact that he can clear boards with the 6-drop can clear board and the 8-drop can clear board. So and on top of that, you're going up the chain without utilizing energy. So you have all the energy that you charged, you have it open for defense. Whether it's Bloodlust or a Negate or something. So I think Broly essentially can be played aggressively, but is more of a control deck because of what the 6 and the 8-drop do. And then the fact that the leader can draw back up to 6 cards is a little crazy. But
yeah, I can definitely agree with that.
We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see what comes of anti-meta and Rogue moving forward. I definitely feel like Mass Saiyan is always going to be in a strong spot for Rogue or anti-meta consideration just because of the sheer fact that you can put a lot of pressure early and it's mostly going to be critical damage. So either way, it's bad damage no matter what. There's no such thing as good damage when you're playing against Mass Saiyan. But I definitely would really like it if we can talk about more Rogue stuff in the future as we get more and more cards released from Bandai with set 7 and 8 and 9 moving forward. So we've been talking for a little over an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start wrapping it up here, but I just want to say thank you for giving us some time to come on with us to talk about something that's not really focused on too much in the game. A lot of people don't really focus on Rogue strategies too much, but it's definitely something that's out there, so I definitely am glad that we were able to shed some light on it. For those of you listening who really like playing stuff that's off the cuff or anti-meta or Rogue, definitely don't get discouraged by what your meta is, because you can always make noise in many different ways, and it's always nice to see innovation and encourage new plays. So that's like Andrew said, we just want people to have fun in the community and we want the game to grow, and so far so good, but we want to keep it going. So before we get out of here, are there any shout outs or any things you want to say before we get on out?
Honestly, shout outs to Bandai for hitting Super Shenron. If you listen, anyone from Bandai, thank you. You've blessed the earth. But but also everyone who's watching, who I know from Level 1 and Toy Wiz, anyone, thank you for encouraging me to keep playing a deck that I love to bits, even though it's not the greatest thing out there, and not turning me into a meta sheep. Because I feel like the game would be so much more mundane if I just stuck with the crowd and played what a lot of people play. And I feel like there's so much innovation that goes behind a lot of people's decks, especially at level 1. Like, everyone's always trying something janky and new and fun, and sometimes we come up with some cool stuff.
Yep,
and,
for sure.
I guess I never got that encouragement playing other card games. Like, if you played something that wasn't the top tier deck, you were frowned upon. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what makes a lot of this game stand out from a lot of different card games. Because when, who was it that topped AC? I'm really sorry if I'm forgetting his name. Because I talked to him.
Topped AC?
Yeah, AC in January. Um,
I don't remember.
why is his name escaping me? He was a really nice guy, but we were talking actually before the tournament, and I didn't know who he was. Apparently, he's really good. And he was like, I see a lot of potential in rogue strategies nowadays. This was during Shenron Gogeta format when everything was a lot slower, but you just have to look at it like if you're willing to, if the community themselves is willing to put in the effort to play something different and do well with it, the meta can be so diverse from what it normally is.
For sure.
The community just have to be willing to put in that effort.
Sure, 100%. I definitely listen. I definitely agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's our responsibility to not only have fun, but grow the game, but in a way where it's organic and it's genuine and not forced growth, because that can get pretty annoying. Just we want to do everything in a positive light. So if anybody gets anything from this podcast, it's there's 100 different ways to play this game, but there's only one way to have fun, and the only way to have fun is for you to be positive about what you're doing. Because if you're negative, you're not going to have fun doing it. So I think I speak for myself and Andrew when I say that yes, it's nice to be competitive, but it's more nice when you're having fun surrounded by a group of people that you've grown accustomed to seeing on a weekly basis and just having some laughs, because some of the conversations that we have at our locals are just hilarious. And sometimes I wish that I could include those conversations on YouTube in the Battle Chamber videos, but I don't want to lose my channel. So,
Vow Revenge, it's dead.
Yeah, exactly. So, thanks again for joining us. You're more than welcome to come on in the future as more and more rogue strategies get revealed to us, whether it's through playing or actual card releases for new product. And I actually hope that you do come back on with us if for some reason Mass Saiyan gets some type of boost or some crazy card that helps it. But
give it to me.
But with that being said, we are going to get on out of here. Thanks again, Andrew. Thank you so much. Shout out to the Cuddle Crew. Shout out to Level 1 Games. Shout out to everybody who's listening. Thank you so much for all the support. We hope you enjoy, and we will talk to you next week. Be there or be squared.